Hello everyone, back to you in today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days. For today's second video, it's going to take us right to the end of November. I think go to the 30th of November, which is day 10. So we are getting very close now to the end of the month. And of course, colder areas established across the country now. We've got these easterly winds. They're going to stay with us the next day or so. And then they'll sort of shift more towards the south and it'll become a bit less cold, although probably still with some fairly frosty nights where skies are clear. Going into weekend and next week, it's getting a little bit more complicated again. The blocking signal is being strengthened a bit on some of the model output. So yesterday it looked like this blocking was going to start to ease away over weekend into next week. But I did say expect more changes, and we said that in the live stream that I did with Quantum on Sunday evening. I said expect more changes in kind of like the day 7, 8, 9, 10 time frame as the models try to get a handle on this blocking, and we are seeing signs of that in some of the model output today. So just how quickly the blocking gives way to the Atlantic will remain to be seen. Whether indeed blocking does give way to the Atlantic, it remains to be seen how that's going to work out. So I'll talk you through the model output in a moment. So just say, but coming up this evening, we're going to have the, I think we're up to update number 8 now. We're going to have the 8th Christmas update. That'll be around 7 o'clock this evening. And earlier on today, we released the ECMWF 30-day ensemble forecast for the UK and for Europe, taking us into the middle of December. Perhaps a little bit surprisingly, the ECMWF 30-day ensembles seem to be indicating something quite a bit milder through the first half of December, but we should wait and see on that. Right, so getting on with today's video, I just start with this. Again, this is from weatheriscool.com. This is depicting the strength of the zonal winds over the North Pole at 10 HPA, both in terms of where we've been through this season, which is this blue line just here, and then the forecast part is covered first of all by the GFS ensembles, which is this green area just here. That only gets us 2 weeks in, and then the other coloured lines there, the 3 pink and 1 blue, they are from the 4 CFS V2 runs. Just to explain this red dash line, I don't tell you about this very often. So this is depicting how the zonal winds performed last year at 10 HPA over North Pole. So you see these are the dates. So we've got sort of November there, December is there, January is just there, and February is just there. So you can see that in last winter during January in particular, you have a very strong zonal wind. It went much stronger than average. Average is this black line just here. So the zonal winds went much stronger than average, associated with a very, very strong polar vortex. But then look what happened in February. Absolute crash of the zonal winds in February. That was associated with the sudden stratospheric warming that occurred during February. So when you see the zonal winds crashing like that, it's telling you either you've had, if you're looking back in the past, either you've had a sudden stratospheric warming, or if it's a part of the forecast section of the chart, then you are being forecast to have a sudden stratospheric warming. Look what all of these CFS V2 members are doing during December. Well, we've got 3 crashing in December, around the middle of December, somewhere between the middle of December towards Christmas. 3 out of the 4 CFS V2 members are still crashing those zonal winds in December. 1 delays it, this blue line just here, that delays it a little bit until the very start of January. So we've got 3 out of 4, I think, going for a sudden stratospheric warming at 10 HPA in the middle of December. 1 delays out ever so slightly into the start of January. But they're all 4 are again today. And this is a very much a recurring theme with the CFS output at the moment. All 4 are going for some sort of major disruption to the zonal winds to occur through the early part of this winter. That's a key point. Normally this happens later on in the winter. So what happened last year with the sudden stratospheric warming in February, that's more typical of what you tend to get in a normal winter. But CFS is very keen to do something quite dramatic in the stratosphere in the earliest part of the winter. As I say, that is quite unusual. So we should wait and see how that turns out. We'll be keeping an eye on it, of course. Right, this is the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. So the black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. Red line's at the end where GFS samples are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over the North Pole. It's not driving anything, it just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. When the AO is in its positive phase, you can have low pressure up over the pole. And at this time of year, low pressure over the pole will tend to mean that you've got low pressure around Iceland, you've got high pressure strength from through the Azores, and you'll be strengthening the zonal westerlies through the Atlantic and into Europe. When the Arctic Oscillation is negative, you tend to have high pressure over the pole. You'll tend to have blocking up over the North Pole. Blocking is a route to pushing cold air out of the pole down into the mid-latitudes. So at the moment, the Arctic Oscillation is negative. So we've got high pressure blocking things out. It's one of the reasons why we're turning colder right now from Scandinavia. And that blocking also stretching towards Iceland and Greenland as well. The GFS ensembles over the next week take the Arctic Oscillation down to a very, very negative level, actually. They go right down to around -4 on the scale, which is really, really strong negativity of the AO, and you would look at that and probably expect things to be a lot colder in the next week or so than they're going to be. I mean, it's going to be quite a cold week, but we're not seeing a real extent of cold coming along in the next week for our part of the world, but there will be very significant cold moving down into mid-latitudes in some places. Scandinavia might turn very cold, for example, in around a week, and that might push down into other sort of central eastern parts of Europe. In the second week, as we go into start of December, there are signs of a recovery of the Arctic Oscillation then. We see most of the GFS ensemble members trying to lift the Arctic Oscillation back up, at least towards neutral. There's no sign that we're going into a particularly positive phase of the AO, but the GFS ensembles look like they're starting to lift the Arctic Oscillation back up towards neutral anyway, as we go through the first part or the first days of December, possibly implying something a little bit more Atlantic driven, maybe starting to get going through the early part of December. North Atlantic observed and forecast chart is very similar as well. So black line here tells us where we've been with the NAO. Red line's at the end where the NAO has been forecast to go. Again, we are on the sort of negative side of neutral at the moment. We're going to go properly negative with the NAO. In fact, it is going to do a little bit of a crash over next week. So in the next week, we're going to have the NAO and the AO in very negative territory, which would normally be associated at this time of year with cold weather. And we are going to have a cold week in the next week, but maybe not quite as cold as you might think by looking at those two indexes. Getting the extended range, the GFS ensembles are keen to start to lift the NAO back up, heading up towards sort of neutral or possibly even some positive territory with the NAO through the first days of December. Telling us again, but as we get into the beginning of December, we might see, maybe not last all that long, but we might see the beginnings of a return to more of a westerly Atlantic-driven flow, perhaps through the sort of first few days of December. Central England temperature looks like this. So the latest from Hadley is that provisionally up to the 19th of November, we're standing at 9.6, an anomaly of 2.5 degrees nearly above average. So still very mild, very, very warm really for November. This is going to move downwards in the days ahead. I'm not sure it's going to move downwards quite as much as we thought, though. I was anticipating we come out fairly close to average with this November, maybe a degree or a tenth of a degree or two on either side of average, but I wasn't expecting a particularly big deviation. Now I think we might actually have quite a mild month. It won't be as warm as this, nowhere near, but I suspect we may still finish up with around a degree or so above average, because I'm not sure we're going to get the cold nights that you really need at this time of year if you're going to have a crash of the CET. So this will reduce, this will lower. I anticipate it'll probably finish up somewhere in the low 8s or the high 7s. So it is going to come down quite a bit from where we are now. But I think it's going to be a crash, and I think we're probably still going to come out with a fairly mild month in the end now. But we should wait to see. I might be wrong on that, but that's just my anticipation. I'm not seeing too many signs of really cold nights at the moment. So, and to get very big crash in the CT, you really need low daytime maxima and very cold minima. I'm not sure we're going to get those very cold minimums. But we'll wait and see. Right, GFS ensembles looking like this. The red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average at Manchester today. So obviously we're cold at the moment. We are below average. So no two ways about it. Although we're not going to get really frosty nights, there's going to be too much cloud and breeze. We are colder than average. And even though we get a little bit of a tick up at the end of the week into the weekend, going back towards average, there's another little drop now starting to appear within the GFS ensembles through the early part of next week. That's what I've talked about in the video, just some hints that blocking is strengthening a little bit again over the weekend to the early part of next week. Beyond that, through the final days of November into the opening week of December, again, lots of scatter. Many of these ensemble members are going quite mild now through the first week of December. But we do still have several of them that are cold. A couple that are really very cold, going down to -10 or close to -10 at 850 HPA. So, again, it's a very uncertain picture, but probably hinting at going a little bit less cold and more unsettled, maybe, through the early part of December. Precipitation-wise, so we have got some precipitation coming up over the next few days. It's mainly in the form of showers being brought in on these easterly winds. They might be wintry at times. I think there are going to be some wintry showers around this afternoon, this evening, and possibly in places tomorrow too. Not a huge amount of rain, though, until we get to the very end of November, start of December. Then it's looking quite wet. But, of course, that's a really long way off. That is in the extended and unreliable time frame. Temperature anomalies from the 20th of November to 28th are coming out. Colder than average for the UK and Ireland, below average temperature anomalies in the week ahead. So, I mean, it's going to be a colder than average week, most definitely. Temperatures are going to be below average. Precipitation anomalies still looking quite dry, despite the fact that the GFS ensemble chart we just looked at looks fairly unsettled, particularly though as we get through to the start of December. And of course, this is just covering the period from the 20th through to 28th of November. So generally on the dry than average side in the week ahead. Colder and drier than average, therefore, dominating. This is how the GFS is looking for Friday. And we find that we've got high pressure sitting up to our north. We've got some high pressure up here with low pressure down southwest. But just turning winds around a little bit more to a southerly type direction. So a little bit less cold at the end of the week. Into the weekend, though, high pressure continues to be dominating. It's actually strengthening a little bit over weekend around Iceland compared to what we saw on recent model runs. This is the midnight run of a GFS, by the way, so we'll look at 6 o'clock in a moment. So the high pressure there around Iceland and Greenland, a little bit stronger than we thought it's going to be over the weekend. The wind is coming back in from the east again, so it probably brings colder air back, I would have thought, over the weekend after slightly less cold period at the end of this week. We go through to Monday, still very much in a really block setup with all of this high pressure up over Greenland, still bringing the air in from the east. The really cold air starting to dig into the north of Scandinavia on the eastern side of this blocking. Heading into the middle part of next week, keeping things cold. This ridge is extending from the Atlantic up towards Greenland. Cold air with this trough of low pressure here digging in over Scandinavia. And then we've got this deep area of low pressure winding itself up to the south of Greenland. That's going to put the block under some pressure. Through to the second half of next week, we're trying to break the Atlantic through, but notice still quite a strongly blocked signal up to our northeast. And now we've got some really cold air sinking down over Scandinavia into north and central parts of Europe. That's trying to move this way into the UK, but just not quite making it. But this is quite a cold week through the course of next week for northern and eastern parts of the country. Look how cold it is over Scandinavia and northeastern Europe. Have got the -5 isotherm there through northern and eastern parts of Britain, but it's turning milder at the end of next week down in the southwest. Then we set up a little bit of a battle. This is battle lines drawn type stuff here, a little bit beyond day 10, Saturday the 1st of December. We've got high pressure blocking over Scandinavia again. So we've got more high pressure up there. We've got these cold easterly winds pushing in from the east, and then we've got this low pressure down here. So there's a weather front that's strung out through there. On the northern side of that front, you could get snow. On the southern side of that front, you would probably get rain. That's a very long way out, but it's just a signal, or it was a signal on the midnight run of the GFS, that this blocking is a little bit stronger as we go into the end of November than we did see yesterday. In the very extended range, we establish these southwesterly winds, and it turns a lot milder, but of course that's not worth worrying about. Then we go through to the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. Again, high pressure up to the north and the east as we go through the weekend. Still properly blocked here over the weekend, still bringing in those winds from an easterly direction, probably allowing cold air to seep back in from the east and the northeast. Through to the start of next week, again, quite a battle taking place here between low pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, high pressure up here. So again, the low pressure is trying to establish those milder winds. We're trying to keep those colder winds going from the east, though. In the extended range, perhaps a little bit easier on the 6 o'clock run compared to the midnight run. We establish these westerly winds. Westerly winds break through, turning it very unsettled and a lot milder up to day 10. Well, maybe not a lot milder, but a lot milder, but certainly milder up to day 10, with low pressure properly breaking the blocking down quite easily this time. However, in the more extended range, again, we do see signs that the cold air is trying to come back, and it's still very cold up over Scandinavia as we move into the beginning of December. That's how we look at the very end of this GFS run. Pretty cold in the north and the east of the country, with low pressure having to go to get back in from the southwest again. This is the ECMWF, so again, over the weekend, blocking strengthening, actually, to the north of the British Isles. This is Sunday, with high pressure to the north of the UK. The winds are back in from the east again, probably allowing colder air to seep back in from the east. Into the middle of next week, we keep this blocking area of high pressure going over the UK and to our east. Mainly dry, but probably increasingly frosty, maybe freezing fog as well. And this low pressure in the Atlantic with the ECM is really blocked, actually. So you notice it's not making much progress in from the central Atlantic. We just keep this ridge sitting over Scandinavia, keeping the wind in from the east, and probably bringing increasingly cold air in from the east, actually, through the course of next week. There's a little bit of an upper level cold pool sitting there just to our east on day 10, Friday 30th of November. So the ECM keeps things cold and dry through the course of next week. So a lot of uncertainty still about this blocking, but what we can say is very gradually the blocking is being strengthened by these models to the weekend and the beginning of next week. What that means for the rest of next week, we'll have to wait and see. We might find a situation where we're getting to battle lines drawn and we have high pressure, low pressure, and cold and mild air fighting. If we do, we will get snow, probably, parts of the country from that. Equally, we might just break the Atlantic through very quickly, turn things a lot milder very quickly. Or the alternative scenario is this one with the ECM, that the blocking the high pressure just maintained to our northeast, so we keep it cold and dry through much of next week. These are the various options that are on the table for day 10 with the ECMWF ensemble. So I just took you through these very quick. This is from the Icelandic Met Office. So 17 out of 51 ensemble members, that's 33.3%. Day 10 want to have a very extensive blocking signal to the north around Greenland and also towards Iceland, with low pressure. Let's change colour. Low pressure to the southwest. So that's a battle sort of situation. There'll be weather fronts through there, and you'd be looking at rain in the south and milder air, but cold air in the north, and possibly some snow for some parts of the country. A further 14, which is 27.5%, look like this, just taking that blocking a little bit more towards Canada, and so allowing the low pressure to move up from the Atlantic like that. So that's a mild, unsettled but milder solution there at day 10 with those ensemble members. And then a further 13 look like that with low pressure and milder winds coming up from the south west. Then we've got like we've got another 5, which is 9.8%, that are in line really, I think, with the operational ECM, which just looking at, which just keep this high pressure blocking things out either to the north of Scotland, or in terms of these two, 3.9%. Kind of like to the north of Scotland and also over Scandinavia. So the option that we have there with the operational E70 to keep that high pressure just over Scandinavia and keep us cold and dry through next week up to day 10 is actually not particularly well supported by the ECM ensembles. Mostly of the ECM ensembles want to turn things quite a bit milder in day 10. Certainly for the south anyway, and wetter, but there is a chance with high pressure still to our north that we get ourselves into a battle lines drawn situation and possibly have a fight between mild and cold air. And if that happens, then at least for a while anyway, we could potentially be seeing some snow. 360 hours out, the ECM ensembles are looking like this. There are lots of options on the table. So 18 are going for low pressure to be through the country like that. A lot milder and unsettled into the beginning of December, this is for the 5th of December. Although still with a blocking signal, you'll notice, around Greenland. Another 13 have us under high pressure, bringing dry, quiet, probably very frosty conditions. 25.5%, 13 ensemble members look like that for the beginning of December. Another 10 have the high pressure centred just a little bit to our south. And again, very anticyclonic, very dry, but that's milder with the winds coming in from a westerly direction. And then finally, there are 10 that look like this, which is 19.6%. And those are unsettled with low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing in those westerly winds. So by the time you get through to the beginning of December, there's really a 50-50 split, I would have thought, between the ECM ensembles, between the ensembles that want to keep us fairly cold and dry, not particularly northern blocking though, just anticyclonic, so frosty and quiet, and those ensemble members that want to turn things a fair bit more unsettled, mild, wet, and potentially quite windy. We are seeing a signal here within the ECM ensembles, I think, for blocking to be reduced through the opening days of December. So that's in line with what we just talked about in today's first video with the ECMWF 30-day look ahead. But it's all a really long way out, that, and we have got changes occurring within days 5, 6 and 7. So I wouldn't take any of that particularly seriously. I think it's got to be that period over the weekend and start of next week, we've got to focus on for how strong this blocking is going to get to our north. If it gets very strong, then we could well find ourselves in a battle between low pressure trying to head in off the Atlantic next week, and that could bring all sorts of fun and games. Say no more about that until we see a few more charts. Right, so that's today's main video done. Come back tonight around 7 o'clock. We'll have your 8th Christmas update. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.